Hi, this is Miss Merced, and I'm going to go continue. We're going to continue with the complex number idea and imaginary numbers. Now, I believe that in the last video we talked about imaginary numbers, and I had a different definition, but here's another definition of imaginary numbers. It is any number of the form a plus bi, where a and b are real numbers, and b cannot equal 0. And here are some examples: 2 plus 3i, 7i, or I. And a plus bi, the reason why b cannot be 0 is because then 0 times any number ends up being 0, and it goes away, and then it's just a real number. And we talked in the last video about the complex numbers and how I now represents square root -1. So here's another concept of complex numbers. You can write a complex number in the form of a plus bi, we just saw that, where a and b are real numbers, we just heard that. If b equals 0, then the number a plus bi is real. Again, if b ends up being 0, this goes away, b times I goes away, and then it's just a real part. If a equals 0 and b doesn't equal 0, then it's just a pure imaginary number. So if a goes away, then and all we have is b and I, then it's just a pure imaginary number. So now we're going to talk about adding and subtracting complex numbers, and we're going to go over these two examples and two other examples. Okay, so here are the two examples that we are going to go over. The first example is 4 minus 3i plus -4 plus 3i. We have an addition in between it, and this is an adding and subtracting example. Well, this is just an add example. But what we want to do is we want to rearrange things where we have real numbers with real numbers and imaginary numbers with imaginary numbers. We honestly really don't need these parentheses, so we can just ignore them. And let's go ahead and write the real numbers together. So that's this one and this one. And then let's see, we have a -3i with a +3i. So that's this one and this imaginary number. And then we'll go ahead and add them together. If you've noticed, this is going to end up canceling out. 4 minus 4 ends up being 0. -3i plus 3i actually ends up being 0 also. So this wasn't a great example because the answer ends up being 0 for this one. But let's go ahead and try another adding example. So here's one that I was able to find. Six minus 4i plus 1 plus 3i. Again, because it's adding, we really don't need the parentheses. Let's go ahead and group our real numbers together. That's the 6 and the 1. Sometimes I like to cross them out so I know what is left, and then group the imaginary numbers. Now that I have them grouped together, I'm going to go add or subtract what I can. So 6 plus 1 is 7, and -4 plus 3i is -1i. That's as far as I can take this. There is no, question is basically simplifying. There is nothing more than I can do here. So this is our final answer. Okay, let's do a subtraction problem. And the subtraction problem that I have is, let's see, 5 minus 3i minus -2 plus 4i, and this is subtracting example. Okay, so this one is a little bit different than your other example, because you do have a subtraction in front of a parentheses. So you want to pretend there's an invisible 1 there, and you actually want to distribute this -1 into everything inside the second parentheses. So I'm going to rewrite the first part because that doesn't really need anything. And then I'm going to do -1 times -2 is +2. And -1 times 4i is -4i. And then we'll go ahead and regroup everything. So real numbers get grouped with real numbers, 5 plus 2. And imaginary numbers get grouped with imaginary numbers. Add like terms, 5 plus 2 is 7. -3i minus 4i is -7i. And that's about as far as we can go for that example. Okay, last subtracting example that we are going to do. This one is, let's see, 3 minus 2i minus 5 minus 4i. Okay, this is our next example. This minus sign is very important. You are expected to distribute it to the second parentheses. Now we have 3 minus 2i minus 5 plus 4i, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And then let's go ahead and regroup real numbers with real numbers. So 3 minus 5. And then imaginary numbers with imaginary numbers. Add like terms. 3 minus 5 is -2. And -2i plus 4i is +2i. And that's about as far as we can go with our subtracting. So that is it for adding and subtracting. And then we are going to do in our next lesson multiplying and dividing. Thank you.